I thought I had ruined this cutting board, but it turned out even better than I could have hoped it would have. This is the process of making this board and how much I sold it for at the end. I wanted to make a big end grain board, so I started out with this piece of mahogany. I used my makeshift table saw joiner to make a perfectly flat edge, and then I ripped it up into strips after that. Then I ripped some strips up of some purple heart and Paduke to add some variety to the board, took all those pieces over to the planer, and I planed down the edges that would be gluing up first so that I have a nice, perfect, smooth edge to glue up to each other so that it makes a nice bond. Since these are all darker woods, I wanted a little bit more variety in there, so I also threw in a couple of thin strips of maple that I had lying around. Whew. Finally took that mask off. Oh, that was brutal. Alright, so we're gonna glue this up right now. And I kind of did it's not symmetrical. I did that on purpose. And I put these strips in that are different sizes. So what I'm gonna do is tomorrow when it's dry, I'll cut all the strips to the thickness that the board's gonna be. And I'm gonna see how I wanna alternate them and set them up to glue it together tomorrow to finish the pattern. And I think it's gonna look pretty cool. It's gonna be kind of like miscellaneous-ish. It's not gonna line up into a symmetrical pattern, but I think it's gonna look cool. Art. So let's run it. I sped up this part because I was just talking about random things that made no sense and kind of just talking to myself. I didn't need to put that in here. Nobody would have found it entertaining. So yeah, there she is. It's now the next day. Time to unclamp this. See how it glued up. Oh yeah. That is a solid piece right there. Dang. Yes. Beautiful. Now I took it over to my router sled, and this was the first time I've used this router sled I built. It worked out really nice. I'm happy how this thing turned out. I need to make a new mount for it so I can mount my bigger router on there though. And then I just sanded it off, just flattened it out a little better. Then I took it over to the table saw, ripped it into the thickness that I want the board to be. I believe it was a little over an inch. And then I just ripped it all into strips, as you can see here. And then I went and came up with the arrangement, which was just flipping every other one. And it turned out pretty cool. Glued that up, and then I'll see you in another day. So now it's the next day, and I pulled that thing out of the clamps, went back over to the router sled, flattened this top down real nicely. Stoked on this router sled. It's pretty sweet. Very nice to finally be able to make these end grain boards. I've been wanting to for a while, but I've just been doing other stuff and honestly just kind of lazy. But trying to be as productive as possible these days. So I got this done, flattened on both sides. It was looking good. I then took it over to the table saw, just cut off all the edges so that it was nice and smooth on each edge and square. And then I sanded it down on both sides so that it was all smooth and flat. And then I decided it was time to put in a juice groove. And I have never done a juice groove before. This was my first attempt. So I watched a video. It told me this cool idea, put a piece in the middle that you could track around. And it seemed straightforward. And I was going to do a square juice groove that had corners on it that met up. But I didn't think about it enough, or I don't know.
what went wrong, honestly. But I just didn't know what I was doing, and it didn't turn out good. So I fixed it by flipping it upside down, going over to my table saw and cutting 45s along the grooves. So it took the corners off, which was the problem, obviously. And then made what would have been the bottom, the top of the board, and put a new juice groove on it. And then that juice groove turned out good because I went halfway on the router and rounded the corners instead of trying to match the same distance, like running past the sides of this jig guide thing. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but hopefully it does. And so, yeah, I'm super happy how it ended up turning out. And from now on, the way to do it with at least this jig system is to do the rounded corners. Just run the router halfway onto the corner and then roll it over. So once I had it all done and looking good, once I had it all finished and looking good, now I just had to sand it. And I spent quite a bit of time sanding it, rounding over all the sharp edges, making sure that it was all nice and smooth. And yeah, this thing turned out pretty sweet. And then I threw some finish on it, and my dad ended up buying it as a gift for my grandma. And I had it listed on Facebook and everywhere for $260. My dad paid $250 for it. And yeah, couldn't be more happy. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Subscribe.